Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stand Up Speakeasy. I am Srethne, I'm your host, and every episode of the Stand Up Speakeasy, I bring on a guest to interview, which is a stand-up comic living in the Central Time Zone, and eventually I'll branch out, but I was supposed to go on tour, but the pandemic hit. But without further ado, my guest today is Jeremy Drazner. Jeremy? How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. Thanks for being on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
You're quite welcome. And so, Jeremy, you're a stand-up comic, and a sketch, and you're also performing sketch comedy, and you're based out of Chicago. And what's it like out there?
Well, right now nothing's happening. Everything's shut down. But before the pandemic hit, I mean, Chicago's the best. It's really cool because a lot of people view Chicago as like the step before you move to one of the coasts, and it's really cool seeing people who come to Chicago to do comedy and people who grew up in Chicago or the suburbs doing comedy as well. And like we have places like Second City, The Annoyance. We used to have IO, but that shut down. And so that's great for sketch comedy and improv. And we also have like the best stand-up open mic situations, shows. We have Zanies, we have Laugh Factory, Comedy Bar, all these like really great comedy clubs. And there's so many open mics. I mean, you could do 5 open mics a night if you wanted to before the pandemic hit. And, our public transportation's great. So you could just take buses and trains wherever you go. And the people are just like really supportive. You don't have to pay to do open mics. We have like national headliners, people who tour, and people who are just starting out. And so it's just like a really cool place to be. And I'm really hoping it can get back to how it used to be once everybody's vaccinated, and hopefully everyone starts following the rules in order for us to get back to normal a little bit. So.
Indeed. As I mentioned off the record, I went there to Chicago, and I heard you mentioning, The Annoyance, and that place is a heaven on earth, and that's where I got to perform one of my shows. And gosh, that when it packs out, and it's just such an amazing feeling to perform in front of so many people like that.
The Annoyance Theater was the first place I did stand up as an adult.
Awesome, and good stuff.
They have like a really cool open mic, and they have a showcase beforehand, and it's really fun because everyone puts their names in a bowl, and it gets picked, and it's like cool to see everybody like hoping to get their names picked, and people are applauding everyone when their names get picked, and then you see like a whole slew of people leaving if their names aren't picked. So it's a really cool place. It's a fun bar. I mean, Mick Napier found it and runs it, and he just knows comedy. He's the best. So he's a really cool guy. He made a great theater. I love it.
Most definitely, indeed. I'm looking forward to going back in October and see what else is. Hopefully, everything opens up again and all that good stuff. And Jeremy, you're also the head writer at Fitz Games, comedy card game company. And what's the story behind Fitz Games?
So Fitz Games makes themed comedy card games. We initially started by doing like a question answer format of games, such as like that you would see at Apples to Apples or Cards Against Humanity, or different versions of those games, but each one was themed. I was brought on to write for the Jewish game, and so I did that like right when the pandemic started in March. When the lockdown started in March. Then I wrote a few more games, and the CEO of the company, Mike Rosenbaum, him and I were getting along really well, and he asked me if I wanted to be the head writer, and I said, yeah, I mean, I love doing it. And so I led some different writing sessions, and we confirmed it after I wrote the first game to be the head writer. And it's been great because I've been able to get a lot of really great comics from Chicago and all over the country to write for the game, and we get paid for it. And so being able to have a paid opportunity in comedy is really hard to start on. And so to be able to do it for comics that I really respect and people who became friends of mine has been really amazing.
Absolutely, indeed. And speaking of getting paid for comedy, Jeremy's Venmo is on the bottom there, so I'm trying to raise funds for comics during the pandemic since they don't can't have any shows at the moment in Chicago. So feel free to throw money at them. And where can they buy Fitz your Fitz Games comedy card game?
So you can get them on Amazon, or you can go to fitzgames.com. And we got to work with some pretty cool people. Cypress Hill, that rap group, was a sponsor of one of our games, and we got to work with Alice Cooper for our horror movie themed game, which was really cool. It's called Horror Box. He was literally the nicest guy I've ever met. So it's been a really cool experience. I really have enjoyed it so far.
Man, that's so awesome. Like fun story. My very first professional interview in Los Angeles when I lived out there was with B Real from Cypress Hill at the House of Blues.
Oh
On
yeah,
this trip. Yeah, it's pretty neat. I'll have to send that out there. And while I was out there, I was working in the horror industry too. So um, uh, I'll um uh, I'll send you some information on that too. It's pretty neat how like horror and comedy have this really cool like just thing that they have. Like it works so perfectly well together, like Evil Dead and so forth, and like Shaun of the Dead, etc. And it's a beautiful couple. Horror
yeah.
and
Like some of my favorite comedy is you don't really know where it's going, and then there's a huge twist.
yep.
And I feel like that works really well in horror movies. Obviously, I know nothing about horror movies. The first time I started watching them was when Mike said we were writing it because of Alice Cooper, and I spent my summer watching horror movies and not sleeping. I'm
Uh,
I'm scared of everything. So
Same here. Like I only watch them in the daytime, and and then I try to like watch a cartoon at nighttime just to like cleanse my palate, so I can get some good happy dreams. So
yeah.
indeed. So you're a graduate of the Second City Training Center, writing and improv programs. And what were those days and years like out there?
uh, well, I started with the writing program, and I really liked it. I was doing about 3 to 4 months as a stand up, and I went to a friend's show at Second City, and I was talking to him afterwards, and he said, "You should definitely do the writing program. I've done it. It'll make you a better joke writer." And so I thought it was just like joke writing. I was like, "Great, like this is really nice." Then I found out it was sketch comedy, and I mean, I grew up watching SNL, Key and Peele, Mad TV, all of those shows, the Chappelle Show, and I was like, "Great, sketch comedy's awesome." And my teacher said, if you want to do stuff at Second City, you could also sign up for improv classes. And so my friend and I that I met at the writing program also signed up for improv the next session. So we did writing 2 and improv A at the same time. And we did it back to back on Saturdays. And so the writing class was from 9 to 12, and the improv class was from 12 to 3. And we would end class at like 11:50, and we would run down to the lobby where there's a Chipotle, and we'd like scarf down tacos before class because we were so hungry. And we knew that we weren't so hungry yet, but we knew at 3 o'clock we would be. And we'd like scarf down these tacos thinking we couldn't be late to class, run to the improv A class, and then sit there for 10 minutes waiting for the teacher to show up. So it really wasn't, we didn't have to do that. But I feel like after week 3, we're like, this might be a cool thing to reflect on if we ever make it in comedy, that we had to scarf down tacos in order to go to another comedy class. And so we did that. I finished the writing program, so we got to write a show, like learn, which is really cool because there's 6 classes for writing. In writing 5, you learn how to write and produce a show. And writing 6, you actually cast your show, and your teacher is the director, and you kind of learn all the ins and outs of producing a show with like sound cues, light cues, selling tickets, making posters, advertisements. So that was really beneficial. And the improv program is 5 programs. So I ended up getting to graduate from both programs at the same time, which was a lot of fun.
Indeed. Man, that sounds like a lot of fun. I really want to move out to Chicago just to learn how to do theater and writing and was the Second State Training Center like expensive or is it like
Yeah, it is expensive, but I found it to be worthwhile. I know some people don't feel that way, some people feel like they kind of got scammed. But my expectation was never to be on the Second City main stage. Mine was just to get better at comedy. And I was just able to find different ways to get on stage at Second City. And you rent the theaters. It's not considered a Second City show, but I'm from the suburbs of Chicago. A lot of my friends live in Chicago, and my family's really supportive. And so I would write these shows with other people. We do it in these small studio theaters at Second City. And my family was really helpful in helping to sell tickets, and they would sell out all the time. And so we just had more and more opportunities to do it. And like at one point, I was like, I'd really like to do the national tour. And then I was like, or not. Like whatever happens, happens. But the opportunities happen if you make them happen. You just can't have a goal on one thing. If you say I want to be on the main stage and you never make it to the main stage, you're going to feel like a failure. But last year I wrote and produced 5 shows with people. Or in 2019 I did. Sorry, it's 2021 now. In 2019 I wrote and produced 5 shows with people. And that's really hard. But I was able to get the opportunities because of this, what I learned at the program. So
Wow, that's an amazing accomplishment right there. So that's great stuff. Hopefully you do go on tour, and hopefully you travel through Florida, and I'll buy tickets to go see that and support you.
oh, thanks. We'll see. I doubt it'll happen, but
Indeed. And so for our interview today, we're raising funds for the Fanconi Anemia Research Fund, and I believe that's how you pronounce it. And
yeah.
and what made you pick those fine folks to raise funds for?
So a good friend of mine that growing up that I worked with in high school, his name's Jacob Grossman. He was diagnosed. He has Fanconi anemia, and it's a really rough genetic disorder. It's really complicated to explain, but it's really hard on the people who have it. People die at a pretty young age from it, and it's the worst. And so anytime somebody asks me what charity would you want to donate to, I always say Fanconi Anemia Research Fund, because I want to make sure that they're able to find a cure or treatments in order to ensure that these people are able to live a long and meaningful life. So
awesome, great stuff. And I put all everyone's information from Jeremy's Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter on the bottom of the video scrolling, and also beneath the video, and where you can donate to Jeremy's Venmo and the Fanconi Anemia Research Fund. And it's just a click away. So donate if you can. That'd be fantastic to all those great folks, and follow Jeremy on all those fine social media platforms too. And so, Jeremy, I was supposed to go on tour and interview comics like I do here, and but the pandemic hit. So these next questions are what I wanted to ask you. Great. So, Jeremy, what inspired you to perform stand-up comedy?
I've loved comedy my whole life. I never really got that into music. Everyone says like growing up, my parents would play the Beatles, and I love the Beatles now. My dad and I both loved stand-up comedy, and we would listen to stand-up albums in the car whenever we would drive somewhere. I think I've watched every Comedy Central Presents growing up. I was obsessed with it, and I would read books on it. I would watch every special I could, and really try. I love comedy movies. Everything comedy was my thing, and it was really important for me growing up and kind of now that people thought I was funny. I wasn't good at sports. I wasn't really good at school, but I always made people laugh, and I really liked it. And then I was working at a job. I was working at a job that I wasn't that happy at, and my parents were kind of concerned that I was just miserable and not doing anything. And my dad said, "Why don't you try stand-up? You live in Chicago now. I feel like you can." And so I went to the Annoyance with a friend of mine who also does stand-up, and my name was pulled, and I was like, great, I guess this is how people become stand-up comics. And I had no idea that there were open mics every single night. I thought it was hard to become a stand-up comic because only 15 people got picked on Saturdays to perform. But then the longer I did it, I met more people at different open mics, and I learned that there are open mics every night, multiple locations, multiple times, and I became obsessed with it. And I love it. So
Indeed, that's awesome. And man, what I would do to perform because I usually have to drive like an hour in each direction to do 5 minutes here in Florida because there's no scene in my city, and I'm like, oh well, this will teach me how to go on tour and like enjoy those long drives. So
yeah, I uh, I think it's really cool that we are able to just like take buses and trains everywhere. To if we want, that there's Ubers. It's super easy. Everything's pretty accessible in Chicago, but I feel like I would enjoy a long drive afterwards because there's a lot more reflection than on the 20-minute bus ride or something. But I mean, there's positives and negatives for both. But
indeed, most definitely. And what was the film like when you first performed stand up?
I was really nervous. Um, the first time I went, I got a lot of laughs, and I was like, I guess I'm really good at this. They talk about like how Dave Chappelle was really good from the start and all that, and I like had these like false expectations about myself. And then the next 6 months, I bombed every set. Like I was like, it was a nightmare. But I just kept getting better. Um, they're they're so. I feel like anyone who thinks that they're at their peak is kind of just like finding ways to be done with it, and that you're always every time you perform, you get better, whether you bomb or crush, because it's like that saying, you learn more from a loss than a win. Like what didn't work, whether it's your jokes, whether it was your delivery, whether it's your face, whether it's the audience. I'm like obsessed with analyzing why things work and why things don't work. And I just love the feeling of doing well. And I'm like constantly chasing that, like dragon, like people are like, you're always chasing the dragon. Like I'm just obsessed with it.
Indeed. And those bomb stories are like the best. Like once like you get over the fact that you did bomb and a couple days later you're like, oh, you can just look back and laugh at it and it's so much fun.
They're I feel like there are different types of bombs. There are some bombs where you're like, you look back and you laugh at it. And there are some bombs where you're like, I'll never recover from this. Like,
It hurts so good for sure.
yeah. I, I'm like, one of my goals, my New Year's resolutions is to not acknowledge if I'm bombing. I always like feel so self-conscious about it that I'll make jokes about it not working. And I'm really trying to kind of just push through it and be like, that didn't work, move on. You have another joke coming. And I just always feel like so self-conscious when I'm up there. I'm like, no one wants to hear you talk, Jeremy. Like, sit down.
Indeed. And you mentioned earlier that you were watching pretty much all of the Central presents, and I want to know what your favorite comedy specials and comedy record albums are.
Ooh. Comedy specials. I saw Jim Gaffigan film one of his specials in Chicago, one of the newer ones. I forgot the name, but I went with my dad, and that was a really cool moment. I was just starting comedy, and I was like, this is really motivational. Just seeing all the cameras, the giant, it was at the Chicago Theater, there were giant screens. And my dad looked at me and he's like, one day this could be you, you just need to try. And I was like, I doubt it. And he was like, no, you can. I was like, probably not, but we'll see. So I really liked watching it because I'm like, oh yeah, I laughed so hard I threw up during the taping of that.
Wow.
I like had to run out of the theater, and like it was really cool seeing how what jokes made it, which jokes didn't. So any Jim Gaffigan one. I guess I'm Starving by John Panette is my favorite special, mostly because John Panette was my dad's favorite comic, and whenever John Panette came to Chicago, my dad would go see him, and I memorized that album growing up. And there are some jokes that didn't age very well, but I still watch it, and it like brings back a lot of cool memories. And like when my dad would go see him, I'd be like, what jokes did he make? Which jokes do I know that he said? And then I'd be like, all right, what are the new ones? Like I was always like pretty obsessive about it. So I guess I'm Starving by John Panette is my favorite album just because it kind of made me obsessed with comedy. But I mean,
Indeed.
Gaffigan also.
Most definitely, man. That's pretty awesome. Like you mentioned your family a couple times in here, and to have them support you and all that good stuff is such an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like my dad, when I went on my first and only tour, I saved up $300 to go on like a 14 show, 10-day tour. And he goes, "You'll need an extra $100." So he threw an extra $100 my way, and sure enough, I did. And it was like by the time I had this tour wrapped up, I had $40 in my pocket, and I was good. So
Yeah. The first time I did Zanies in Rosemont, it was for their Tuesday 10 showcase. My dad bragged to everybody. He was like super excited. All these people came and he was like taking pictures of everything. We got like pictures from the side. Like he was so excited because he saw some of his favorite comics there. He was like, I can't believe you're performing there. Like, this is so cool. And he like would always exaggerate and be like, he headlines 80s. I was like, I did not headline. It was a showcase. I didn't even get paid for it. Like,
oh, those comedy shows. That's the truth. Like we never get paid for these things, but it's so much fun to make everyone laugh and so
yeah.
being and getting that so much support that's like, from family and friends, it's just amazing.
Whenever I do a show and someone hands me cash afterwards, I'm like, oh, nice. Like, this is awesome. I'll take it.
Absolutely, most definitely. Whether it's 5 or $100, we're just happy. It's a
Yeah.
nice cherry on top for sure. And if you can go on tour with any comedian locally and internationally known, which comedians would you like to go on tour with?
Oh, wow. Locally, we got a lot of great comics in Chicago. I'd say Leah Berman, Vic Pandya, Joe Madoff, and yeah, I feel like we'd all have a good time. I mean, there are very few people in Chicago that I wouldn't want to travel with to do comedy. It's just the different groups that you would do it with. And yeah, I mean, I just respect so many Chicago comics. I don't know that many comics in other cities or states, but the ones in Chicago, like, I really enjoy watching them perform, and I really like talking comedy with them. So
Most definitely. That's what I feel about Daytona Beach is seeing the small, close knit and talking comedy with them. It's just like, oh, it's heaven on earth with those cats. So,
yeah, I
uh,
mean, that's what I miss most besides performing obviously is what I miss a lot. But like talking to comics before and after shows or open mics, just about comedy, about life, just messing around. Like it's just, I miss that so much.
absolutely. And that's why I started this thing because I'm like, if I can't go out and interview comics during the pandemic, I'm going to do it at home where we're safe and I get to meet new comics I would never thought I would ever get to meet before. And it's just so rad.
Yeah, I don't really love doing Zoom open mics or stuff like that, but I understand why people do. And I think it is cool that you can be in Chicago and do an LA mic, a New York mic, things like that, and you're just meeting people. I think that's really cool. I'm a teacher and I do remote learning, and so I don't really want to look at a screen and talk to people not responding during the day when I deal with that at school. Um, but I definitely understand why people like to do it. I miss going to open mics every day and working on new material. I've written so many new jokes that I want to try out. But I think being able to meet comics from all around the country is a really special gift in this really terrible time.
Indeed, most definitely. What subject and grade do you teach?
I teach middle school special education, English and math.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Man,
I
you,
love
def- you definitely do the Lord's work for sure. That's so awesome of you.
it. People say that, but I really like it. It's really interesting because teaching's a lot like stand-up comedy. When you first start, you think you're good, but it really takes about 5 years to be competent at teaching. And then you just get better and better. And I feel like that's how it is with stand-up too. Is like you're always doing someone else's voice, your first few years doing it. And then you kind of figure out who you are as a comic, as a person. And it's the same way with teaching. I was pretty miserable my first few years teaching. that's why I went into comedy. I was like, you know what, like I don't know if teaching's for me. I need to find an activity that I like doing. But this is my 7th year teaching, and I have really found the joy in it. I really like where I am, and I think being able to see growth amongst the students, it's like I'm able to have fun and teach them, but it also makes an impact on them. And like on the really stressful days where I'm like wondering why I didn't go into finance or something like that, like the rest of my friends, I like think about like all the really nice moments I had, and I'm like, you know, this is a pretty cool job, and not a lot of people get to do it, so it's pretty cool.
Most definitely. And it's so true what you said, because I've been doing stand up for like 7 years, about 5 years consistently. And now that I found my voice, it's just fantastic. They call me the cleanest, dirtiest comic in Daytona Beach because I say all these really dirty things without saying a curse word, and it's
Uh,
just fantastic. Indeed. And so, Jeremy, if you can get roasted by 5 comedians, past and present, which comedians would you like to go on? Which comedians would you like to get roasted by?
to get roasted by, um, Mark Normand, Sam Morril, Amy Schumer, uh, Burke Kreischer, and man, there's so many good ones. I would say Natasha Leone. Um, they're all just such good writers, and a lot I've seen a lot of them do like different types of rows, and it would just be a really good time. And I would have the worst imposter syndrome of all time. So
Indeed, most definitely. And where do you see your comedy career in the next 5 years?
I'm not sure. I feel like if the world opened again tomorrow, I would still stay unless something like amazing happened, in which I got an opportunity in LA or New York. I really like being in Chicago. My whole family lives here. I live 3 blocks away from my grandmother. My mom and sister are in the suburbs. Um, it's just really important for me to be around them. My dad passed away um, almost 2 years ago. And so I really want to be able to stay close unless something amazing happens. But I don't know. I like teaching a lot, and I love comedy, and something that I just don't know. And I think that's okay because I will always enjoy doing comedy no matter where I am.
Indeed, I send my condolences to you, Jeremy,
Oh, okay.
and I'm so glad that you decided to stay close to your family and all that good stuff, because that support system is very important. That's why I moved to Florida, to be closer with family, and they're supportive too, so it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, just I would love to do comedy as a full time job. I'm pretty realistic in knowing that a lot of people don't make it as a full time job. Um, but I'm the kind of guy where it's more if I stop enjoying it, I'm not going to do it. Not if I don't make it, I'm going to stop doing it. If that makes sense. My first One of my first times at the Annoyance actually was during a premiere of SNL where one of the people who came from the Annoyance made it to the cast. And it was really interesting because when they called his name on the show, I would say 2/3 of the bar went crazy, like someone just won the World Series, like the Cubs won the World Series. And then I saw a lot of people who were kind of like, I'm funnier than that guy. Like, what is that? And I thought to myself, like, if I ever get to the point where I'm being jealous of other people's success, I don't want to do it anymore. So I hope in 5 years I don't get like that. But yeah, I just can't imagine my life not doing comedy. But it's not. It's one of those things where I don't care if I make it or not. I do care, but I'm pretty realistic on all of it.
Indeed, most definitely. Same here. Like, jealousy is a terrible trait, and if I ever get that to that point, I'll quit too. So, um, I always joke about me retiring every year, and so it puts the chicks in seats, and it works every time. So, and then they get really mad when I come back from retirement, and they're like, "You lied to us." I'm like, "No, I'm just trying to get people into the seats." So,
Yeah, yeah. it's really interesting. Like people who are like, I hate comedy, and then you see them every night. I'm like, you don't hate comedy. You hate that you're not doing this as a full time job or something like that. And if you do hate it, you don't have to do it. No one's putting a gun up to your head saying you need to go to an open mic or you need to go to a showcase. So
Indeed, most definitely. And Jeremy, from what I've understand in the from the our interview so far, you've done improv, sketch, stand up, and and you also directed your own shows a couple times. And which other forms of comedy would you like to venture off into? I know that you did writing, but there's podcasts that you've done the cards and so forth. But
what's my favorite you said, or
which other forms would you like to jump into, like comedy wise?
TV writing. You
Awesome.
know, I that's like my ultimate dream is to write on a TV show. Um, whether it's a sketch show or just a regular TV show. Um, but so
You'll get there for sure. I believe in you for sure. Most
we'll,
definitely. Indeed. And what is your favorite joke a comic's ever written?
favorite joke of comics ever written. Mm. I don't know. That's a really hard one. I don't know. I would say the best roast joke about me that I heard was I was in a roast last year where somebody said, "You may not know where you've recognized Jeremy from, but he actually starred as the Peach in James and the Giant Peach." I thought that was really funny.
Oh,
Um,
and those roasts are rough. And my very first comedy showcase was my roast, and because I wanted to be baptized in fire, and so I can like deal with this, and it's on YouTube now, and it's like 500 views almost, I believe. But I sing at the end, but it's like a full hour of just classic, like Don Rickles style, like, and it's just brutal. But I think I'll send the link your way, and you'll have fun with it. I promise. You'll just they're brilliant. So, um, and let's see here. Uh, what experience would you like your audience to take with them after a set is over?
I'm I want them to feel like they know who I am. You know, pretty much all my jokes are based off of my life or about physical traits or just weird things that happen in my head. And I love it when an audience member comes up to me and is like, I feel like we'd be friends. You know what I mean? And that's what I like the most. I'm a pretty clean comic. I really don't swear that much on stage. I don't swear that much in general. I make a lot of jokes about being Jewish. I make a lot of jokes about my weight, about being single. Um, but I've started writing a lot more about like the weird thoughts I have in my mind because my mind just doesn't shut off. And so like I'm constantly writing, I'm constantly thinking of ways to tweak jokes and stuff like that. But I always want I never want the audience to think that I'm somebody who I'm not. And I want them to be like, that guy's a lot of fun. Like I feel like we could do that again.
Most definitely, indeed. And for the final segment of the show, Jeremy, is which comics would you like to see, stand up comics in Chicago, would you like to see as my next guest on the Stand Up Speakeasy?
Oh, well, the people I've mentioned already, Leah Berman's hilarious, Joe Madoff, Vic Pondia, Tyler Fowler, they're all great. Then like we have Tad Walters, we have is a really great writer. These are all guys who write all comics who've written for Fitz Games before as well. Um, who else? Max Shanker's really funny. We have yeah, those are all of them. I always feel bad saying names. I always feel like I forget. I always forget people. Sarah Volpio's really funny. I think everyone's really funny. You know, like it's like one of those things where if I think you're funny, like I'll remember who you are. And if I don't think you're very funny, I'm like, oh, like I've seen that person around, but I don't really remember their name. You know what I mean? So, but I mean, all those comics are just super funny.
Indeed, most definitely. Well, my goal is to put like the entire Central Time Zone's comedy scenes all on the map with these interviews. So eventually, I'll get it to everybody in Chicago, I hope, and put them all on the map with this. And if it grows to like 1 million subscribers or whatever, I'm cool. If not, I'm cool with that too. It's like I set my standards really low. So, but I'm at that 450, so that's not too shabby. So.
Awesome.
Indeed. So Jeremy, I might need your help on spelling everyone's names too, because I'm really bad at spelling everyone's names. Because sometimes they spell it with like Brian with an I or a Y, and so I'm like, so I totally need your help with all their spellings if I can. And so, with that said,
Their names.
oh, fantastic! Thank you so much, Jeremy. And if you can, if you're watching at home, please follow Instagram and TikTok and Twitter for Jeremy. His information is there. Donate to him during these times because there's just most of the Chicago comics are out of work because all the venues are shut down. And
Don't Venmo me if you want to give money. Donate to the Fanconi Anemia Research Fund. I have a job. I'm not depending on comedy for my livelihood. So if anyone wants to pay any money, give it to the Fanconi Anemia Research Fund.
you heard the man. Do that and do that instead. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for being my guest tonight. And are there any final words you'd like to give out to the audience at home?
No, I really appreciate you having me. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and it's an honor and a privilege to have you on as my guest. And I'll piece everything together and I'll send your way. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time on the Stand Up Speakeasy.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Jeremy. We'll see you when I go visit in October.
Yeah, please let me know when you're here. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.